Hello, I'm Leah from TYFU, and welcome to our chat about presentation. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Fairlie Hamilton, a veteran radio host, presentation expert, host of her own podcast, 40 with a Newborn, and founder of The Presenting Coach. Fairlie has had a dynamic career in media, and we're so excited to hear about her journey, her presentation tips, and her advice on how to stand out and shine. Thank you so much for joining us, Fairlie.
Hello, thank you. I'm not sure about I've never had the word veteran. Good, it's accurate. So I forget sometimes how old we are now.
We are in that age group now where we can be veterans.
Yeah.
Good and bad. Look, we're really grateful to have your time today. And just to get things started, love for you to tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you got into radio and podcasting.
Okay, well, I don't always wear the headphones and the microphone, but this is the setup for recording. It looks like I'm really into presenting, which I am. But as far as my career goes, I always knew I wanted to be a radio presenter. I used to listen to the radio as a teenager. I'd be on the train listening in the mornings. We'd go home on a Friday night. I'd be watching a movie with my parents or my mum and my sister, and I'd be literally listening to the radio still, like in my ear. I just loved the radio. I knew I wanted to work in radio, and I finished school. I did a degree in media communications, but radio is quite a specific sort of skill set. I went to the Australian Film, Television, Radio School, which is in Sydney. It's at Fox Studios, and studied presenting there. It was a short course, and then they sort of act like agents almost for their students.
Okay.
Well, they want to see their students be placed because it's
successful.
Funded. Yeah, so they found a job out in Inverell, a small country town up in northern New South Wales. And they were like, oh, we know somebody who might be able to do this particular job. And they contacted me and said, would you move? And I was like, I guess. So, yeah, I moved around for a bit. I moved from Inverell down to Victoria to Shepparton. I moved up to the Central Coast, down to Wollongong, back to Sydney. And, yeah, I just have loved working in radio and media, doing a bit of writing and a little bit of TV stuff. And it's a great, fun job. My most recent one, though, was at the ABC. So I kind of worked mostly in commercial radio, but I then went to the ABC for 7 years. And because I had babies, I then wanted to work for myself.
Some flexibility. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've set up the Presenting Coach so I can help people if they need to do emceeing, people who work in sales and need to do client presentations, people who want to learn to do a keynote speech, but also podcasting is such a booming medium, and I do have a podcast that I really wanted to give people the skills to do it, because people go, oh, I really want to do a podcast, but they don't know how to structure content, how to record things, what microphone to buy, producing content. There's a lot to it. So I've got that skill set, and I think it's one that people need at the moment. So, yeah, I'm able to kind of juggle mum life and presenting still.
I think that is fantastic. And I love that you found your calling at a young age and you just had eyes on the prize. You knew what to do. And I think that leads to the most successful people, the people that know their path.
Oh, thank you. I was very lucky. It's much harder to figure out what you want to do than to know what you want to do and do it, even if it's a difficult career path.
Yeah, very true. What's been a highlight of your career so far?
Okay. When I used to do a breakfast program in Wollongong, a lot of people might be familiar with Symbio Wildlife Park, which is kind of within our listening area. So we have a lot to do with them. And one morning they were coming down to have a chat to us. And I said, oh, bring something down, thinking that they'd bring down, a blue-tongue lizard. Yeah, exactly. And they came in with this big teddy bear and a big bunch of eucalyptus, because inside that was a little baby koala, and I got to hold the baby koala. And honestly, it's a career highlight. I mean, obviously I've spoken and interviewed people and all that sort of thing, but holding a baby koala was a highlight. Yeah, but also I got nominated for an award, which is obviously a highlight, like a commercial radio award. I didn't win, I'm going to be honest with you, Leah, but it's all in the nomination. And also at the ABC, there's a lot of really important work being done during times of crisis. For example, the 2020 bushfires, which were particularly bad on the South Coast. It was a real sort of, I wouldn't say pleasure because it was difficult, but to be able to perform the function of keeping people updated with what was happening and emergency warnings through that sort of crisis time, that was a bit of a highlight as well.
Yeah, you're playing a pivotal role in a crucial time. That's very rewarding for sure.
Yeah, yes, thank you, yes.
It's just everything that you've mentioned is so different, such a diverse, guess every day in radio is different when you're talking to different guests and covering different things. How exciting.
It is
Um,
a fun job.
yeah. As a presentation expert, I would love to know what are some of your top tips for great presentation and communication?
Okay, this is a saying that is relevant to so many situations, but failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So you really need to know what you're saying, what you're doing, and that needs to be specific to your target audience. So, number one, figure out who your target audience is. Obviously, in this context, it's applying for a job or speaking
Right.
to interviewing you. So,
Hiring managers. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, you need to construct your responses, or when you're formulating what you might say to certain things, you can sort of predict a lot of the questions that you get asked in job interviews.
Mm,
Yeah, you obviously need to be conscious of the fact that you're speaking to hiring managers. So knowing your target audience in any presenting situation is number one. And then number two, you're able to figure out what you are saying. So you need to really prepare what it is that you're saying. Something that is very useful, obviously, going into a job interview is maybe sitting down and brainstorming some of the questions that you're likely to be asked and writing out your answers so that you can look at them, get them out of your head and really
mhm.
solidify them. That really works for me. Some people work better not having written them down. That's fine.
Right.
Do whatever works for you. But I do think that as a general rule, to get it out of your head, to be able to look at it, that kind of helps cement that particular answer. The thing is, though, when you're writing it, written language and spoken language are two really different things. So write it out and read it, but then, you're not going to obviously memorize that script. You just sort of want to
Be
know.
natural. Yeah.
Exactly. Be natural, know what the story is. And if for some reason you do want to read off a script, if you're in a situation where, I don't know, maybe you're doing a phone interview, so you can read off a script without
Yeah.
them knowing that you're doing that, just read it and then go, oh, I actually wouldn't say it was at that point that you would say, and then I did this,
Yeah.
like they're two different ways of saying the same thing in those
Yeah.
different formats.
Yeah. Excellent. Great tips. Thank you. And I'm sure you've interviewed, you've been on the other side where you've interviewed lots of interesting people from all walks of life as a radio host. I would love to know what makes somebody stand out to you in a good way. So,
In a
yeah,
good
what makes
way,
them memorable?
somebody who is really switched on and focused on and present. A lot of the times, particularly in the context of radio, you might be interviewing people who they have to do a press tour just because it's part of their contractual obligation, or maybe they're a rock star or an actor, so they're a little bit, cool for school. And they're like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't want to talk to this person. And you feel that as an interviewer. You're like, oh, they don't really care. They don't give
Yeah.
a time that they're here and having to chat to me. And it's not, you don't engage properly with somebody who's like that.
Yeah.
So just focusing on the task at hand. I mean, if some people have done acting or, roles where you need to sort of warm up and focus and get into the moment and then step into what it is you're doing, it's a good idea to really do that. Think about what it is you're doing, go in focused and ready to sort of be present. Because, yeah, when you're able to sort of have an interview or feel as though you're really paying attention, you're really listening, your mind is really in the room and ticking over and thinking about what's being said, that's what makes a great guest.
Yeah. So listening and being present.
Yes.
Any bad, terrible interviews that you've done that have been memorable for the wrong reasons?
Yes, I could be guilty of this right now, Leah. I'm not sure if my answers are too long-winded for you, but really long.
No, they're not at all. I think they're succinct enough for me.
Thank you. Thank you. We interviewed, when I used to do a drive show down here in Wollongong, we interviewed Meatloaf once. This was years and years,
Oh,
and it stands out because we asked him one question, and I'm pretty sure it was, oh, how are you going today? Like, I think it was literally
basic question.
yes. And it set him off for literally like 30 minutes. I think it was 28 minutes technically, but me and my co-host were sitting there and we turned off our microphones because he's just sitting there chatting and we were laughing going, what do we do? And you're kind of sitting there trying to like find where you can politely interrupt and break in.
Mm.
It was
Wanted to monologue. That is hilarious.
Yes,
28 minutes. So just one question for the whole interview.
and you just, oh, yeah, I'm good. And I'm here right now. Been here and I've been there and then I'm doing this and that. And we're like, cool. How do we
Yeah.
edit this so that it's 3 minutes and it sounds interesting?
Right. So brevity is also quite important.
Yeah. But also people, as I mentioned, the flip side of what I said is, a great guess. Yeah, someone who's sort of disengaged and not interested and
Yeah.
or flustered. Like when you're going into a job interview, it's obviously great to plan, oh, this is what I'm going to say. These are my examples of X, Y, and Z. Fantastic. I really get down to the nitty gritty of like, right, what am I wearing that day? What do I need to manage in my life to make sure I'm ready at that particular time? Really sort of making sure that you're walking into it and you're not worried or stressed because you were like, oh my God, that shirt's not ironed and oh, my
Right.
kid did
The
this.
bus isn't coming. Right.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just trying to alleviate or remove any stress.
Yeah. Good one. And I'm sure you are an expert at this. Any advice for overcoming nerves? So before a big interview or before a big, you do a lot of emceeing and hosting and things. Do you have any tips that you can share?
The first thing is everybody gets nerves. If you're someone who gets nervy and anxious, most people I talk to,
Mm,
I get pretty bad anxiety at times. I can really ruminate on things.
right.
And going into presenting, sometimes it is really stressful. So, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So I find that people are quite happy to admit, yeah, I get really anxious. So number one, don't feel like you're weird or different or anything if you're really nervy, because it's so common and maybe it's not spoken about enough, but it is. So what you can do is there's a couple of different things. You can do a long-term sort of approach, which is breathing exercises. If you're really super anxious and nervy in that sort of setting, you can always sort of go and get a bit of counseling and they will give you some tips on what you can do, probably mindfulness stuff. But if you're like, okay, I do get nervous, but I think I can manage it, there's a couple of great apps like Calm and Headspace. They give you some meditations and breathing techniques that you can do that help you to sort of focus and calm down in the moment. So that's sort of a long-term approach. If you're in the situation where you're literally sitting in that room waiting to be called in for an interview and you're like, oh my gosh, this is horrendous, there are a couple of things that you can do in the moment. I mean, you can remember those breathing techniques and implement them then in that moment. But one of the things that I use walking into a situation is physically making yourself really big. Somebody told me this trick. I did some stand-up comedy in London, Leah.
Oh,
And that
wow.
was the most stressful thing I have ever done. And somebody had
That's
said,
not for the faint-hearted. Stand-up comedy, you've got to be very brave for that.
I know. That's why I did it in another country. I was like, I'm not doing this where people might know me. Yeah, but make yourself really big. So, I mean, obviously, maybe
Physically big, right. So,
physically. Stand up,
yeah.
put your arms out, put your legs out, put your chest out, take a big breath, like make yourself take up as much physical space as you possibly can. And it has a physiological response on your body. So it kind of gets your blood flowing, it gets your muscles moving, gives you a little bit of adrenaline, but it's a bit of a power stance. So kind of, has a bit of a mental impact as well on you just feeling strong and powerful and ready to fight,
right.
Not that it puts you into fight or flight, but it's just a way to get a
Feel
bit of
powerful.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the moment. So maybe just got
Is
to
that like something you do for like 30 seconds or is it 5 seconds
oh,
or?
for the longest, 5 seconds is enough.
Okay.
What long
Yeah.
you need? I mean, I just literally kind of like go, yeah, more, and shake myself out and go, like, okay,
Right.
cool. It really helps. I know it sounds
Yeah.
bizarre, but it really
Yep.
does help. So that's something that in that moment you just go, okay, I'm just going to quickly go to the washroom,
Yep.
check my makeup, or if you're a bloke, check your hair, whatever, and just go into a cubicle, make yourself
Do
really
that
good.
big pose.
And
Yeah.
you go, wow, I actually feel really good right now. So yeah, that's a really good tip. The other thing is if you're someone who gets hives and you're like, oh my God, they're going to be
Can't
upset.
hide that. Yeah.
Yeah, try and tell your brain to bring that on. I don't know the psychology of this, but a psychologist actually told me about this.
Mm.
When you sort of tell your body to do something like, um,
Blush.
yeah, do your blush, make your face go red, for some reason, your body then won't do it. I'm not sure why, Leah. But yeah, if that's something that you're dealing with, like get the hives, they won't come.
Okay.
To you.
I've never heard of that, but I love that tip. Thank you
Mm.
for sharing that, Fairly, because I think that is a really handy one because, yeah, that would definitely throw me.
It's quite specific. I get a bit
Yeah,
hot. It kind of gets red when I'm going,
right.
and it's like, oh.
And you've tried that. Has it worked for you?
Oh gosh, I can't
You
tell
haven't
you.
had to try it yet.
I feel as though I haven't been in this since I learned this information. I feel like I have
Yes,
a
you
situation,
haven't had to.
but
Yeah.
I'm someone who will go into like a job interview. Back in the day when I was younger and looking for jobs, And I would get hives, and I'd be able to act confident, but I'd be like, oh man, they know, they can see I'm nervous.
Yeah, it's hard to hide something like
It's
that, but
hard.
yeah. Amazing. Look, I think you have shared so many valuable tips, and confidence and presenting is just such an important skill, and it's definitely something that we can all work on to master. So, thank you, Fairlie, for sharing all of this with us today. And if anybody does want some personalized coaching or some more presenting tips, you can definitely get in touch with Fairlie at the Presenting Coach. I will share all of the details with you. And yeah, we look forward to seeing more episodes of your awesome podcast. It's very funny.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Leah.
Take care. Bye.